Chapter 3. This assembly of sleepwalkers awakened to life and became animated at the entrance of Rogelio, who, before taking his afternoon drive or walk, was in the habit of showing himself for a moment at the meeting, laughing at what took place there, but good-naturedly, with the mischievousness of a spoiled child. He had nicknamed it the Idle Club, IDLE, Idle Club. Candace, on account of his bald yellow skull, he called Lain Calvo, and the smooth-shaven and gallant Senor de Febrero, Nuno Rasura. The servants called them by these names among themselves. Even the Senora de Pardinas laughed in secret, although she pretended to be vexed and would say to the boy, "It is very wrong for you to turn them into ridicule in that way, those poor gentlemen who are all so fond of you." And they were indeed fond of him. The moment Rogelio appeared, it was as if a ray of warm, golden sunlight had entered a closed and darkened room where furniture, hangings, paper, and pictures have all acquired the faded hue imparted by the dust and the damp. All the old men loved the boy. One of them remembered him when he was a child in arms. Another had been present at his first communion. This one had brought him toys when he had the scarlet fever. That other, a professional colleague and the intimate friend of his father, became a child again when he thought of the baptismal sweetmeats. If they had acted according to their feelings, notwithstanding the black fringe that adorned Rogelio's upper lip, they would have showered kisses on him and brought him caramels and peanuts. For them he was always the little one, the boy. It was true that by a curious illusion the worthy guests of Senora de Pardinas were disposed to regard the young as children and those of mature years as young. They would say, for instance, "So Valdivieso is dead. Why, he was in the prime of his life. He was only a boy." And it was necessary for the malicious Asturian, putting his ear trumpet or his hand as a substitute to interpose, "A boy indeed! A pretty sort of children you are dreaming of, truly. Valdivieso was past 50. He was not so old as that, not so old as that." "What do you mean? In the time he was in his nurse's arms and learning to walk, does that count for nothing?" Where Rogelio was concerned, they carried to an extreme this whim of forgetting the passage of time and turning a deaf ear to the striking of the clock. Every additional year he spent in the study of the law was for them a fresh wonder. They could not fancy him a lawyer. They would have had him still at school learning to read. Once in his return from a summer excursion to San Sebastian, Senor de Rojas had said to him with the utmost good faith, "What fine time you must have had, eh? Running about and playing on the beach all day, I suppose." And the boy answered without betraying any annoyance, but with a grimace of mischievous drollery, "Yes, indeed, splendid. I made holes in the sand and built little houses with it. I never enjoyed myself so much." In reality, the good heart of the young man had grown attached to the assemblage of worthy old oddities who frequented the house. This very Senor de Rojas, for example, inspired him with a feeling of affectionate respect, on account of the justness of his views and his unquestioned probity. If Themis should descend to this lower sphere, she might take up her abode in the house of Senor Rojas, and she would find there an altar erected to her and her image, of wood, according to Candace. A jealous interpreter of the law in its literal signification, Rojas walked along the narrow path that lay before him, without turning to the right hand or the left, with head erect and with a tranquil conscience. Convinced of the exalted dignity of his position, he complied with the requirements of social decorum at the expense of incredible privations in his house, sympathized with and seconded in this heroic conduct by his wife. In the exercise of his functions, he was influenced neither by considerations of politics nor of friendship. Interests involving millions had been entrusted to him, without awakening in him the faintest touch of cupidity, which is only the instinct of conservation expressing itself in the guise of acquisitiveness. For this reason, the honorable name of Prudencio Rojas was pronounced, sometimes with veneration, sometimes with the disguised and caustic irony which vice employs to discredit virtue. The sarcastic Don Nicanor called Rojas a puppet of the law. He said that everything about him, mind and character alike, was wooden, neither seeing nor wishing to see that this kind of men, if laws were perfect as far as it is possible for human laws to be, might, by their firmness and integrity in applying them, bring back the golden age. Often of an afternoon, especially if it was very cold, or if it snowed or rained, Rogelio, instead of going out, would settle himself comfortably in a corner of the broad sofa and listen to the drowsy chat of the old people. Whenever he could, he tried to turn the conversation toward a subject for him full of interest, and one of which he never tired, his native Galicia, which he had left when he was very young. Almost all the party were either natives of that province or had spent long periods of time there, filling positions in the court of Marinela, and they expatiated on the benignity and salubrity of the climate, the cheapness and the excellent quality of the food, the easy and cordial manners of the people, and the extraordinary beauty of the scenery. I cannot understand why our amiable friend Dona Aurora does not take the child to see his native place, Senor de Febrero would say, stroking the cushion of his crutch. I am always intending to do so, Senora Pardinas would answer, but it is one of those plans that something always happens to interfere with. The truth is, as you know, that up to the present there has always been some difficulty or other in the way. Say that you are very fond of your ease, mater amabilis, her son would interpose. If it had depended upon you, you would have been a tree that you might have taken root where you had happened to be planted. Just as I take you to San Sebastian, I might have taken you to Galicia, child, but it has not been possible to do so. Do you think I don't often long myself to see my native place again? We who were born there, it is foolishness, but our dearest wish is to go back to the old spot, and our love for it never changes. And we who were not born there love it too, added Don Nicanor Candas, armed with his trumpet. I would give my little finger now to spend a year in Marinela. I would rather go there than Oviedo or Gijon. But with me, continued Senora Pardinas, something always occurred to prevent me from carrying out my plan, as if the witches had interfered in the matter. Do you long to see your native place again before you die? Well, wear yourself out with waiting until you are bent double with old age. You shall hear the causes of my never going back there. And she would count them upon her fingers. First, the difficulties in the way of doing so. You leave your family, your home, your possessions, to wander about the world, with a young child who is always delicate, from Oviedo to Saragossa, then on account of the regency to Barcelona, then to the Supreme Court here. I was always saying to Pardinas, resign your position, man, resign your position, and let us return to the old land and not leave our bones in a foreign soil. With what we have more than enough to live, and our family is not so large as to be a burden to us. But you know what my poor husband was? There is no need for me to tell you. A murmur of sympathy in the audience. He believed it was his duty to continue at his post to the end. And whenever duty was in question, at any rate, that was his idea, and it was necessary to respect it. And afterward his health became so wretched. Here Senora Pardinas's voice grew slightly husky. She put her hand into her pocket and, taking out her handkerchief, blew her nose and wiped her eyes. So that, she repeated with a sigh and a shrug of the shoulders, when the time came, and afterward, you know how I was with my sisters-in-law, the lawsuits and the difficulties I was involved in. I thought I should never be able to extricate myself from them. From my home, my old friends wrote to me, come back, come back. In a day you will accomplish more here than you can in a year there. Chocolate. That's lovely.
It's all right.
It's lovely.
Need more sugar?
I think it's lovely. What would you have? I was afraid of the undertaking, with my rheumatism, to think of shutting myself up in one of those coaches that you couldn't open a window in if it was to save your life. And when, well or ill, things were at last settled and the tangle of the will was straightened out, lo and behold, they put a railroad direct to Marinela. But by that time I had lost the wish to go, for to return home to find myself at variance with all my connections. Not with all of them, mamma. According to your own account, there are several who have taken our part. Bah, how can I tell? In our place, child, it is hard to know who is for and who is against you. On that point I have terrible disappointments. When you least expect it, your friends betray you and drive the knife into you up to the handle. To speak the truth, there we are not frank and loyal, so as to say, like the old Castilians. You talk like a book, assented Senor de Candas, who never let slip an opportunity of showing his claws. The Galicians may have all the good qualities you please, but so far as being tricky and slippery and deceitful as concerned, there is no one who can beat them. Don't trust to the word of a Galician, for they have no faith, or if they have, it is punic faith. What must the Galicians be when the gypsies don't venture to pass through their country, lest they should be cheated by them? Oh, burn! Take care how you insult the old land, said Rogelio. Why, that is a well-known fact. No gypsy will go to Galicia. They are trickier and more crafty than all the gypsies put together. And as for going to law, good Lord, they are born litigants, and they will be sure to get the best of you. The most ignorant peasant there could wind you around his finger. That is a proof, responded Signor de Febrero, that we are an intelligent race. You will not deny that? Senor de Candas, removing the silver tube from his ear so as not to find himself in the necessity of replying to this observation, and, in order to finish his argument to his own satisfaction, continued. And there are simpletons who call the Galicians clever. I call them crafty. If they were clever, they would not be always sunk in poverty, eaten up with envy, without ever making an effort to be anything better than beggars and grumblers. They are more given to complaining than any people I know. They are always crying and groaning about something. The ivory skin of Senor de Febrero flushed a little, for he found it impossible to accustom himself to the malignant rudeness of Lain Calvo. You are a little severe, Senor Don Nicanor, he said. Remember that we Galicians are in the majority here. How would you like it if I were to repeat to you now the vulgar saying, Asturian, vain, bad Christian, insane? There are plenty of fools, continued the imperturbable crown solicitor, who make a great show of surprise when they hear these things, but everyone knows them so well that no one thinks it necessary to repeat them. The Galician, it is true, possesses some shrewdness, especially when the question is how to cheat his neighbor, but for all that he can never cultivate any industry nor better his miserable condition. There he is, contented with his crust of cornbread, a poor creature, without clothes to his back, who never eats meat and who does not drink a glass of wine even once a year. Who does not drink a glass of wine even once in the year. With all his reputation for smartness, he sometimes seems more stupid than the Aragonese themselves. He is stingy, and he would save an ochavitu even if he had to scrape it from his skin with a file. But you need not fear that he will ever think of investing this ochavo, or that he will have the energy to work in earnest in the hope of saving $1. Nothing of the kind. All he asks is to be let go on undisturbed in his lazy ways. See, for instance, the network of railroads they have, and what use do they make of them? They would not move a finger to attract summer visitors. None of that desire to please, that neatness of the people of our country. One must either choke this Don Nicanor or take no notice of what he says, exclaimed Nuno Rasura, furious, for he won't listen to argument. Where is that network of railroads he talks about? A pretty network, full of holes. He wants everything to be done in a day. No one but God can work miracles. Everything needs time and patience. Let Don Nicanor take note of the growing importance of beautiful Vigo. Its cool climate, its coasts and rivers are the admiration of the newspapers. And the women, always excepting those present, but then my good friend is from there too. And the fish, the like of which is to be found nowhere else, what do you say of that? My dear Dona Aurora, I have eaten neither sardines nor soles since I left there. Just before the downfall of O'Donnell, I remember we were taking baths in Marin. They brought a turboat to the door that. Here the old man went on spinning the thread of a memory, and Rogelio, leaning with his elbow on the sofa, his cheek in the palm of his hand, listened, absorbed. It seemed to him as if he were listening to some family tradition. The apartment, the people in it, assumed an air of friendly intimacy. The atmosphere, moral and material, was genial. The world was as comfortable and easy for him as the cushion against which he leaned. Each of the company was for him, if not a father, at least an uncle. Around him reigned sweet security. As in certain luxurious abodes, embarrassment and privation betrayed themselves, so in this modest dining room was plainly visible domestic comfort, and the most perfect golden mediocrity that poet could dream or philosopher desire. Harmony and moderation are always beautiful, and Rogelio, without being able to define this beauty that surrounded him, felt it and sheltered himself in it as the bird shelters itself among the feathers of its nest. And while the blazing logs crackled in the fireplace, and the sounds of the mortar came softened from the kitchen, and the old men chatted and his mother knitted her stocking, the boy, plunged in vague reverie, tried to picture to himself what that beautiful country, that green Galicia, abounding in rivers, in flowers, and in lovely girls, was like.